In 2015, the Mimics, an extraterrestrial race, conquered continental Europe. The United Defense Force struggles to combat them, with a sole victory at Verdun and containment at the English Channel. General Brigham of the UDF commands Major William Cage, an inexperienced public affairs officer, to cover the upcoming assault on France. Cage protests and threatens to expose Brigham if the mission fails. In response, Brigham orders Cage's arrest. When Cage attempts to escape, he is tasered and wakes up at Heathrow Airport. Stripped of his rank, labeled a deserter, and assigned to J Squad under Master Sergeant Farrell's leadership, Cage finds himself trapped in a time loop. Despite his lack of combat skills, Cage eventually learns to anticipate the Mimic's movements and gains expertise through countless loops. During one repetition, he encounters the renowned Sergeant Rita Vrataski, who recognizes his newfound ability. She instructs him to find her in the next iteration. Unfortunately, they both meet their demise in an explosion. Cage continues to relive the events repeatedly, each time growing more skilled and determined to alter the outcome of the investigation. Cage awakens on a flight to London. To ensure media coverage, General Brigham assigns him to the first wave of troops in France. Cage attempts to use blackmail to avoid fighting, but is unsuccessful, which results in his arrest. After attempting to get away, he is finally taken down with a taser. At Heathrow Airport, which has been converted into a busy military base, Cage awakens amidst a sea of duffel bags. Before Sergeant Farrell steps in, a sergeant kicks him and insults him. Farrell takes over command after receiving orders designating Cage as a deserter and imposter. Cage is assigned to J Squad, an odd group of soldiers who were caught gambling. Farrell, who witnessed the incident, orders the squad to eat their cards before getting Cage ready for deployment. J Squad removes Cage right away for physical training. The following day, Cage is a complete wreck. He receives a battlesuit, but the J Squad members refuse to show him how to use it or turn off his weapon's safety mode because they think he will perish quickly. The squad drops prematurely when an enemy weapon strikes the back of their aircraft as they are about to drop from it onto the French coast. J Squad's remaining members are all quickly dispatched. A huge blue mimic, an alpha, jumps on Cage as he grabs a claymore mine while still in shock and on the verge of death. The subsequent explosion kills the alpha mimic, and just before Cage passes away, the blue blood of the alpha covers Cage's wounds. In the same location as the day before, Cage abruptly wakes up in a panic. Nobody pays attention to his desperate attempt to convince them that the mimics will ambush the entire invasion. He repeatedly deploys, perishes in various ways while trapped in a time loop, and then awakens on the duffel bags. He survives one loop long enough to inform Vrataski that he is trapped in a time loop. Although Cage regains consciousness while laying on the duffel bags, he works with J Squad and Sergeant Farrell to buy himself some time to locate Vrataski. After making numerous unsuccessful attempts to leave the base, Cage finally succeeds in leaving during PT and discovers Vrataski in a training bay surrounded by training drones. She whisks him away to a weapons building bay where her friend, Dr. Carter, works. He explains to Carter that the aliens have the power to turn time backward. As a result, each time an alpha mimic is killed, they cycle time backward, giving them the ability to precisely predict the next move of the invasion forces. Vrataski claims that, like Cage, she became involved in a time loop after being slathered in the blood of a large blue alpha mimic. At Verdun, she became trapped in a time loop that allowed her to slay hundreds of mimics by herself during what would be her final loop. She explains that after receiving medical attention for her wounds and receiving human blood, the alien blood lost its potency, and the time loop was broken. Until he is shown some information that will enable them to succeed, Vrataski instructs Cage to keep going through the loop. She also warns him to always make sure he perishes in battle or during training. Otherwise, she'll have to kill him to start over. Since no one accepted Carter's theory, he was demoted and assigned to a mechanical repair unit. Carter had developed a device that could locate the Omega if it were stabbed into an alpha mimic. Cage tries to figure out what he is saying, but Vrataski insists that they must first survive the invasion tomorrow to find the Omega. She trains Cage through numerous loops, occasionally killing him despite his protests when he is seriously hurt, so that he will continue the loop. During the invasion, Cage and Vrataski sharpened their combat techniques and advanced on the beach, but despite their efforts, they both keep dying, and Cage is still trapped in his loop. As Cage grows attracted to Vrataski, he begins to experience emotional distress from repeatedly witnessing her passing. Cage and Vrataski eventually reach land after numerous setbacks and deaths. When they discover a helicopter at a farmhouse, Vrataski realizes Cage is attempting to convince her to stay there so he can go alone and confront Omega. Cage manages to reach the German dam on his own. However, he finds nothing there and comes dangerously close to being captured by the mimics before drowning himself. The next loop sees Cage, Vrataski, and Carter piece the visions together and realize that the Omega mimic was behind all of Vrataski's success in Verdun. To trick the humans into invading Europe, where all human armies would be ambushed and destroyed, the Omega had allowed the humans to win at Verdun. The device Carter created that led to his termination is their only remaining lead. The goal of Vrataski and Cage now is to retrieve the object, which is at Whitehall and is kept in General Brigham's office safe. After making several rounds, they finally convince Brigham to hand over the transponder after breaking into the Ministry of Defense. Brigham relents and hands them the transponder before sending troops to go after them. Vrataski stabs Cage's leg with the transponder. Cage discovers where the Omega is, buried beneath Paris's Louvre Museum. Cage wakes up restrained to a hospital gurney and in custody. He notices that he is getting a blood transfusion and notices that he can no longer loop through time. Only a few hours before the catastrophic invasion, Vrataski helps Cage escape, but without the ability to loop back through time, Cage decides to enlist the help of the Misfit J Squad to travel to Paris. The mimics attack their aircraft once they are close to the Louvre. The team is instructed to take one of them, accept death, and not try to kill any alpha mimic in case they come face to face with one, because killing the alpha mimic guarding the Omega is forbidden and will cause the Omega to reset time. Once inside the Louvre, they intend to use grenades to blow up the Omega. Vrataski promises to divert the alpha mimic so that Cage can try to drop a belt of grenades onto the Omega, which is submerged far beneath the Louvre. Vrataski kisses him and tells him that neither of them will make it through the ordeal, and that she wishes she had more time to get familiar with Cage. Cage dives underwater to find the Omega, while Vrataski departs to divert the alpha mimic. Cage pulls the grenade pins and drops the grenade belt into the Omega as the alpha dives after him and stabs him. All the mimics die along with the Omega, and it explodes and perishes. Following his demise, Cage's eyes abruptly open as the Omega's blood seeps into him, just as the Alpha's did on the first day of the loop. As a dying Cage floats down into the Omega's blood, he awakens on his way to his first encounter with Brigham, who states on TV that mimic activity ended following a mysterious energy surge in Paris. Now a major once more, Cage visits Heathrow and discovers that J Squad is all alive. In the end, he runs into Vrataski, who doesn't recognize him. Cage chuckles. Subscribe for more videos like this and turn on the notifications so you never miss any of them.